convinced me. We are back for week 16. This is the top of the Power Hour, the only NFL pregame show with all the stuff you care about, none of the fluff you don't. I am Chad Millman. I am joined by my Action Network buddies, Sean Koerner, Simon Hunter, Chris Raybon. They're going to convince me all the props, all the sides, all the totals I should take for today's slates. Plus, we got Evan Abrams with market reports and trends that make you sound smarter than your friends. We will also welcome in Dr. Nick Giffen. He's going to take us through the latest need to know from our luck rankings. At the bottom half of the hour, Gilles Gallant and Brian Matthews will preview the best touchdown props on the board today for the touchdown show. Stick around for that. Before we begin, a reminder, like this video and subscribe to the Action YouTube page. Also, download the Action Network app, the free award-winning app. Get all the data, all the research, all the picks that we're talking about. Download it today. Let's look at the leaderboard after 15 weeks. Koerner making a comeback. Raybon commanding lead with, 3 weeks to go. Let's get into it. Lots of work to do. Sean Koerner, give us your player prop.
All right. Well, I got a tackle prop for you, Chad,
Love
that I
it.
think is
Done. Give it to me.
I think this one's actually 2 tackles off. That's how much I love this one. It's Talanoa Hufanga of the 49ers to go over 4.5 tackles plus assists at minus 145. I'll get to why. I don't really care about the juice. I'd bet this up to a ton. But he's cleared this in 3 of 4 games this year. The only game he didn't clear it was back in week 5 when he only played a dozen snaps. And if you go back to last year, he's actually cleared this number 83% of the time. And he's cleared this in every game where he's played at least 50 snaps. So this is basically just get through the game healthy and he'll clear it. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. But if you watch him play, he's the type of player I love to back the over because it looks like he's trying to clear his prop. Like he's actively going out of his way to try to get assists and get some cheap tackles. So love to take his over in this market. Plus, this is one of the better matchups for a safety. The Dolphins have provided the 4th most tackle opportunities for safeties. So again, I'm projecting this closer to coin flip at 6.5 tackles. So I think this is 2 entire tackles off.
I almost I'm annoyed because we're on the show and you don't ever tell any of us what your prop is going to be right until you say it on the show. So the market can't move. And now I can't go bet it. And I'm very curious. I want our producer, Gifford, to tell me and check at the end of the show what this prop is at so I can see how much I missed the value by. And it'll be at like 15 because you're so excited about it. Simon Hunter. So it's a big hill to climb because he did a tackle prop and he's excited about it.
I'm going something gross. I'm going Tyreek Hill over 5.5 receptions. I know you think to yourself, Chad, that's not that gross, but I don't know if you noticed this. He's terrible this season. Cheetah has been really bad. He's been underwhelming, and last week was probably his worst game of the season. He had 2 catches on 7 targets for 36 yards. People are just out on this Cheetah experience, and I think that, looking at the comments this week from Tua and the head coach, it seems like they're going to kind of force feed him. Like it's the type of week where the team rally around and try to get him the ball. Then you add in the fact that Waddle's injured. So now they're taking down another mature receiver, and it's going to be even more force-fed to Tyreek Hill. The reason I didn't take his yards prop, Chad, is because we've seen Miami shift this year to being an underneath team. Everything they do is really close to the line of scrimmage. And, again, that's not that big of a deal for me with Cheetah, where it's like Tyreek Hill doesn't mind getting those tight passes underneath. He doesn't like getting hit across the middle of the field. So, to me, this is the type of game where they'll just keep checking it down there and let him use his speed, attack this 49ers defense that's been – struggling against the pass on the outside this season. So it's all about this number for me. Like it's 5.5. I make this 6.5. It's a full point of value on this reception. So I love this, even if it's juiced at minus 120 to the over.
So I like it. Tyreek is already a little bit banged up. And by the way, the Hufanga prop is already to 5.5. Sean Koerner. It would be fun just to see how much over 6.5 it gets, since you said there were 2 tackles of value here. Raybon, let's see what you can say about the props today. Look at the rhyme. I'm like Dylan freaking Thomas over here.
Well, Chad, I'm going to go with Roshan Johnson of the Chicago Bears to go over 3.5 receiving yards. So low number. He's coming back from a couple games missed due to injury. I think that's why his number is so low. But before he went down, he was their number one short yardage back, but also their number one pass catching back. He was playing a lot of third downs. And they're playing Detroit again. And if you saw how Buffalo started that game last week, I mean, it was just a Ty Johnson show. They ended up targeting running backs 8 times for 156 yards in that game. And Chicago, they've been kind of struggling in the passing game. Caleb Williams been running all around, throwing the ball every which way. So I think they're going to get him some easy looks to Roshan and DeAndre Swift in the screen game and underneath to kind of keep the ball moving. They've just kind of ignored their tight ends this year. So that's how you kind of got to play Detroit now with all the injuries. So I think, we saw Darrington Evans and Travis Homer kind of fill that role these last couple of weeks, but they've been getting injured. And now Homer's going to be out today, it looks like. So Roshan Johnson's going to step back into that role. So over 3.5. He went over this in his last 4 before the injury.
Yeah, this is clearly why the Bears have been losing. I love this one, and I would totally take it if not for Sean's enthusiasm and the fact that I love tackle props generally. Still available at 4.5, now at -150 at some places, but geez, this thing is gonna move. All right, I'm going with Hufanga. I'll take over 5.5 because that's where it's starting to go, and I want to do that for the fans. But you're not getting that kind of influence from CBS or ESPN or Fox. This is the show that moves numbers. Let's get on to some spreads. Very ugly slate. I don't think an underdog has covered a game in about 16 weeks in the NFL. Saw it again yesterday. So let's see if we ask anybody to bet some gross underdogs. Koerner.
Yeah, I got one for you. Here's a bet that won't move. Titans plus 3.5. Actually, it might even get up to 4. So you might as well wait and see if it gets up to 4. But the Titans are a 3-11 team that I think could have been much better this year with better quarterback play. Last week, once again, Will Levis had a disaster of a game, throwing 3 picks. One of them wasn't his fault, but one of them, went for a pick 6. He also lost the fumble. And then Mason Rudolph came in, played well, nearly led them to a backdoor cover. So they ended up losing by 10, but our expected score that helps fuel the luck rankings actually showed, the Titans probably should have won that game by a couple points. So that's why I'm going to double down on them again this week with Rudolph taking over as a starter. He ranks 25th in EPA per dropback on the season, whereas Will Levis ranks dead last out of 34 qualified quarterbacks. So we're getting an upgrade at quarterback here. On the other side, Anthony Richardson ranks 30th in that same stat, who's really struggled in year 2. He has the worst completion percentage, 47%, by a qualified passer since Tim Tebow, if you can imagine that, all the way back in 2011. So that's kind of how much he's been struggling as a passer. So I think this should be, a lower scoring game where, sure, the Colts probably win by 3, but we're going to win that here by getting the Titans plus 3.5. So I think that this could be an uglier game. But again, the Titans have an upgrade at quarterback now. So I'm, doubling down on them again this week.
Yeah, look, the Mason Rudolph moved this line from 4 to 3.5 as soon as it happened. Professional bettors are in agreement with you on Mason Rudolph's influence. Tim Tebow's not the only ugly name. Anthony Richardson's completion percentage, if you read Evan Abrams' story this week, Evan will be on in a little bit with some market reports. He's competing with Akili Smith as having the worst completion percentage in the past 25 years, Anthony Richardson. So now people are being asked to go bet him as more than a field goal favorite. That is a tall order. Simon, what do you got?
Chad, going the home dog, the Jets plus 3. And this is another game that is going to be the public hammering this road favorite. And we've seen it this week. There's a couple home dogs getting less than 3% of the bets, less than 3% of the tickets. This is one of them. It's just a great spot to back this Jets team, right? They've been coming in to this season. They were the all-hype team. They kind of fell off a cliff. We saw them, not shift blame to Rodgers, but they did, and he kind of shifted blame to everyone else, right? That's kind of Rodgers' MO. You've kind of seen them unite here these last couple of weeks after that long road trip as a team. It just seems like They're more comfortable offensively. He's in rhythm now, Devonte Adams. We've already seen their defense improve these last couple of weeks as well. This will be a true test for them defensively at home. Coming into last week, they'd only given up 10 touchdowns to wide receivers. Obviously, Brian Thompson Jr. had a great game. But you expect them to match up well against Puka and Cooper Kupp here. And it's actually pretty shocking. Rodgers in his career, Chad, he's 8-0 against the spread against the Rams. Like, it's a weird stat, but it's a team that he owns, where on the flip side, you know as well as I do, whenever Rodgers plays the 49ers, we fade him. Like, he cannot beat the 49ers, even when he had a better team. And on the flip side, he always beats this Rams team. So it's a nice spot. Then we factor in this weather. I think that's a big deal that's not being talked about. It is cold here in Jersey. I woke up this morning, I think it was 9 degrees or 10 degrees outside. It's supposed to be in the mid-20s by kickoff. Stafford in his career, he's 1-3 against the spread in games where it's below 35 degrees. So we know that Stafford likes to be indoors or in warm weather. He struggles outdoors in the elements. He got away with one last week on Thursday in that rain. He had 3 picks that were dropped. He's been kind of on cruise control. The public is loving this Rams team. They think this is going to be a cakewalk. I love the Jets for the upside. Give me the +3.
Yeah, it is freezing. I let my dog out this morning. She turned around and looked at me like, "Are you coming?" I'm like, "Not a chance. I am going out there." I like the Jets in this spot. Huge public perception, overvalue in the Rams. Raybon, what's your bet?
Let's go with the Niners on the road, -2 against the Dolphins. Everyone's kind of just done with both of these teams. It seems like this line has just been kind of jumping around. It finally settled on the Niners after the Dolphins were favorites. So you can tell that some bigger money is kind of going toward the Niners' way. And I think it should, because if you look at the Niners, both of these teams, we don't know exactly what we're going to get out of their passing offenses at this point, really out of their offenses in general. But the Niners are still number 6 on defense in DVOA, despite all the injuries this year. And now the one thing, they've been getting healthier on defense. They got, as Sean mentioned, Talanoa Hufanga back, their safety. They also have Greenlaw and Fred Warner healthy at linebacker. And that's big because the Dolphins are without Jalen Waddle for this game. And, Simon already talked about how they've been kind of struggling to get Tyreek the ball. And they've been leaning on Jonnu Smith as their number 1 receiver. But Greenlaw, Warner, they just erased tight end. So really tough matchup defensively for this Dolphin team going against this Niner defense. And then on the other side, Brock Purdy, all his bad games have all been in like weather. And now we're going to sunny Miami. We've seen Aaron Rodgers just wake up after an entire year of being terrible. 2 games in Florida, all of a sudden, he's throwing for 300 yards and scrambling. So 2 games ago, Brock Purdy was fine. And then all of a sudden, another weather game, he's bad. So I think he can rebound here. And Tua, against good teams, even teams with a 40% winning percentage or better. You don't even have to go to 500. 40% or better. Tua is just 7-13 against the spread since Mike McDaniel took over. This year, Miami just has 1 win versus a team with 6 or more wins. So San Francisco, even though they haven't been as good as we expect, they're still one of those teams that tends to give the Dolphins issues. Their 5 other wins came against the 2-win Raiders, the 3-win Patriots twice, the 3-win Jaguars, and the Jets, who have 4. So give me the Niners.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting game. You would think, or we've seen the bettors coming in hard on the Niners. This line last Sunday was Dolphins -1.5, and it has slowly moved in the direction of the Niners. So now the line is flipped, which is always a scary thing to do as a bettor, to now take the team that is the favorite. I agree with you. Early in the week, I was on the Dolphins. The Niners are probably the right side here. Aaron Rodgers, though, look, everyone knows. Old people from the Northeast, they go down to Florida in the winter. They find the fountain of youth. They feel reinvigorated. I like the Jets here. I know it's so ugly, and they had that story this week, that great story this week in The Athletic about their owner, Woody Johnson, and his kids having influence on personnel decisions, his kids giving speeches in the locker room and giving out game balls before they could give it to the coach. Woody Johnson being influenced by Madden ratings in personnel decisions. It's chaos there. That's why we got to go with the New York Jets, Jets. Evan also had a great stat this week. Teams like the Rams, between 50 and 59%, who are going on the road to play at the end of the year as favorites, that cover percentage is below 40%. So I am also looking to play the trend of teams that are good-ish all of a sudden being overvalued late in the year. We love fading the public. Hasn't always worked, but we tend to do it. Let's take a look at where the majority of betting tickets are according to the Action app. For those who are new, the number of tickets represents who the public likes. The money percentages, also available in the app, indicates who the professionals like. This week, no surprise, public all over the Lions as favorites against the Bears, all over the Bills as favorites against the Patriots, all over the Bengals as favorites against the Browns, all over 80% of the tickets on these teams. Let's bring in Director of Research, Evan Abrams. Going to make us smarter, hopefully feel better about the bets we're making today. Evan, take it away.
That is the goal. All right, so I'm going to start by tapping into my inner meteorologist here. We're going to talk a little weather. So we got 5 games projected to be in freezing temperatures today in Washington, in Chicago, in Cincinnati, but most importantly in Buffalo this afternoon. 15 degrees at kick, going down to 10 degrees, going to be the coldest game of the day by a good distance. Now, Josh Allen has played 3 games in sub-20s. He's 3-0. They've scored 30 plus in each. They've won by 14 plus in each. So that is the spread in New England today. We'll see what happens. And then the last weather game in New York Simon mentioned this, Rams Jets, 23 degrees. It's going to feel like 11. We're going to have swirling winds for anyone who handicaps understands MetLife is a disaster when it comes to winds, very hard to predict. Now, this is supposed to be the coldest game of Stafford's NFL career at about, again, 23 degrees or so. So see what happens there. Now, you heard Sean Koerner. He took the Titans. He likes the Titans. But let's talk about kind of history and then maybe a good sign there. So an ATS loss today for Tennessee would make them 2-13 against the spread. Only the 2007 Ravens started 2-13 ATS in the Super Bowl era. Now, the good thing for Sean is it is Mason Rudolph. And he mentioned a bunch of the analytics and the advanced stats. But keeping it just simple, he usually does keep games tight. He started 12 games with a spread of 7 or less on either side. He's 9-3 ATS, but he's also 10-1-1 in a 6-point tease there. So usually tight games for Tennessee compared to Levis, who tends to turn it over. And I'll leave you with this. You mentioned this earlier, but road favorites, 66-20 straight up this year, 77%. It would be the best full year in the wildcard era for road favorites. They were 7-0 last week. This is straight up. 14-1 over the last 3 weeks, and 34-8 since week 9. Now we have 7 playing today, so we will see, and we'll talk about it on the favorites later, and we'll talk about it on the recap pod tonight. So we will see how that goes today, fellas.
I mean, I swear to God, Evan, I am on every single one of those home dogs. So if this trend continues, you might as well just take me out to the back, man, because that is, and leave me in the cold, because that will just be a brutal, brutal day. Do you want access to all of our experts' picks as soon as they happen? We're seeing what kind of moves happen when Sean Koerner gives away a prop. What about our pro prop projections powered by Sean and Chris Raybon? You get all that plus real-time bet and money percentages with Action Pro. Use code POWER20, get $20 off the annual rate. POWER20 for $20 off. Can we get an update on the Hufanga prop, please, while we go into our totals? Sean, you're up first.
Go with the Eagles Commanders under 47. Some books are now up to 47. But this is, a divisional game late in the season, which tends to make, for lower scoring games. They also, they played just a few weeks ago back in week 11 where they combined for 44 points. And I just liked how these two teams matched up as, Terry McLaurin was held to a season low 1 catch for 10 yards. And a big part of that was just due to rookie Quinyon Mitchell's excellent coverage on him. So I expect him to be on him again today, maybe limit him. And Jayden Daniels had his safety valve, Austin Eckler, lead the team with 89 receiving yards, but he's on IR, so he won't have that option today. So I just think this is going to be tougher for the Commanders to really put up points here. Plus, their defense should get a boost with Marshawn Lattimore finally making his team debut last week. Played well. He didn't allow a single target on 35 coverage snaps last week. So I think, he's a big upgrade for their secondary and, will help them slow down A.J. Brown here and just allow their defense, to put more resources and at least try to slow down Saquon Barkley here. So I'm projecting this game a couple points lower. So I like the under 47 here.
Eagles passing game. Talk of the NFL. Simon, what's your total?
Yeah, I got another gross one for you, Chad. I wish I had known about that weather in the Jets game. Evan gave it a good one. That's a great total if you're looking for another one, if you hate mine. But going to Seattle and the Vikings, it's really all about this matchup between this Vikings defense and how healthy Geno Smith really is. We kind of been left in the dark here about his health in this exact spot, and it's a bad one. Like, he's got a banged up offensive line. Now he's facing a defense that loves to rush five guys and give exotic looks at the line. And he's also struggled at home this season, Geno. On the flip side, it's a Vikings team that this feels like it's peak, Chad. This is a team that's at peak value now going on the road before they come home and play against a Green Bay team and then Detroit. Like, they have a lot ahead of them. They know what's at stake here. How does that not get to them? It's just the human element of it too. It just adds up to me. So I feel like this can be a really tight, low-scoring game between two teams that know this is going to kind of decide their seeding in the playoffs. And if even Seattle, if they're going to even make the playoffs, like, they desperately need this game. So I love that it's going to be a really tight, close game like that. And then you factor in the weather. This is another game where it's going to be windy and rainy up in Seattle. So mixing all that in, it just feels like a nice spot to back this under. And we've seen the Seattle defense, obviously last week they got rolled by Green Bay. But before that, they had been playing really well. They had 4 straight games holding the offense to under 21 points. And I think it's a nice bounce back spot for them at home against this Vikings team that's used to playing indoors, now outside on the road.
Yeah, Geno is the tricky element of that game in addition to the weather. But I agree with you about the public perception on the Vikings. That team is very overvalued right now, playing in an entirely different situation than they have been. All right, every week on the show, there is one really gross game that ends up being the dominant theme of the show. We don't plan it. It just happens, but that's where we find the value. Raybon, you're going to define that game right now.
Yeah, we're going to this Jets Rams under 47. I know it looks kind of scary because, as we talked about, Aaron Rodgers, he woke up, but immediately when I saw Aaron Rodgers put up all those numbers these last couple of weeks, I was like, all right, when he comes back home in this cold weather, we got to fade him. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go with the under here because not only is Rodgers, coming back to the cold after 2 games where, warmed up, everything was good, but talked about Matthew Stafford, coldest game of his career. And what Sean McVay's been doing these last few weeks is just spamming Kyren Williams, especially in the second half. Kyren Williams getting up to, 25, 30 carries every game. And that's just going to run clock here. So Evan already mentioned some of the trends that, just looking at 1 p.m. Eastern, these early window games in MetLife, people maybe don't think about the weather as much, but 62 and 37 to the under over the last 2 decades, per our Action Labs database. So really like this under here in Jets Rams. So give me under 47.
Yeah, those 1 p.m. MetLife games, having lived on the East Coast now forever and seen so many of these games, it almost feels like there's no one in the stands. It is so quiet. It's like a sleepy environment. They are very sneaky for how sort of slow-paced and low-scoring they can be. I love this one. I love betting an ugly under that has 2 old quarterbacks that everyone thinks are going to sling the ball around MetLife. Let's go with the Jets Rams under. We all know. I talk about it every week. My favorite stat in the Action Network universe is our luck rankings. It's taking all the noise out of the randomness, giving us a more accurate picture of a team's performance. Want to see more? Check it out in the Action app, actionnetwork.com. Koerner already referenced it. Let's look at some stats for the luck rankings this week. We got a couple of totals, the Browns and the Bengals, the Cardinals and the Panthers. We're bringing in Dr. Nick. You got some brains? You got some facts? Lay it on us.
Yeah, well, the luck totals have been pretty good this year. So we're going to go with 3 totals here. The first one, we're going to take Carolina versus Arizona. We are going to take that luck over that you just alluded to. Make sure you get the 46.5. 47 is the most key number between 44 and 51. So you definitely want that 46.5. As I mentioned, it's a luck over plus 5.6 luck total. Anything above 5 this time of year means that the games these teams have been involved in have tended to go under the expected score, right? Maybe a lot of red zone where they just didn't get into the end zone type of stuff. Luck overs are 67% to the over the last 7 years, and that's over a 71 game sample size. So these luck overs have really been crushing. And look, Carolina, they just gave up 30 to Cooper Rush, and it was like 31.5 expected score. Carolina defense has allowed an expected score of 30 plus in 8 of the last 10 games. So Carolina defense is going to allow Arizona to score. The question is, can Carolina offensively keep up? And I think so. Carolina has the highest luck team total of the week at plus 4.6. So I think, yeah, it's going to be cold, but it's only going to be about 40 degrees. It'll be sunny. So, I think it won't be too much of a weather impact here, and I'll take the over.
All right. That'll be fun. What's your second bet?
Yeah, well, the second one, we're going to go to that Cleveland-Cincinnati game. This game is a luck under, but Chad, I'm going to get a little creative here. We're going to take Cleveland for the first quarter, under 2.5 points for Cleveland. You can get that at plus 115. I mentioned it's a luck under. And Chad, we always talk about ref stats. We always talk about, for Sean, scorekeeper stats. Let's get some coin toss stats in there, okay? Look, Kevin Stefanski and Zach Taylor, of the two, Zach Taylor, when he wins the toss, is much more likely to choose to receive the ball. And what's happened is out of 14 games this year, Cincinnati started with the ball 11 times. And on Cleveland's side, they've deferred every single time. So they've started with the ball only 3 times. And this has been a 3-year trend with these coaches. So by my calculations, if we have a fair coin, who knows, but Cincinnati should, based off of defer and receive rates, start with the ball around 57% of the time. So that gives Cleveland less opportunity to score here in the first quarter, with this being a luck under. DTR at quarterback, and Cincinnati only allowing just over 4 points in the first quarter per game, with DTR now quarterback of the worst offense in the NFL. I like a first quarter under here.
What in the world made you even think to use that as a data point? How did you come to that conclusion?
I've been using it. Sean would know. I mean, I've been using it like 3 or 4 times this year on some of our Action Island picks. That's how we hit a T. Higgins under earlier this year, because as much as Cincinnati out chooses to receive than Cleveland, whoever Cincy was playing, I think it was Dallas, chooses to receive even more. So like looking at that stuff for the first quarter.
Unbelievable. That's how deep we go. I say all the stuff, none of the fluff. That's what we're talking about. What's your third and final bet?
Yeah, for the third one, we're going to go with the Colts team total under 23.5. That's for the full game, not for the first quarter. This is the second lowest luck team total of the week at minus 4.8 for the Colts out of the 32 teams. And if you have our Action Pro, which I know you just promoted, Chad, you'll see there's now all 5 of our 5 signals. The 5th one just lit up before the show started on the Titans to cover. 3 of our 5 signals are on the under, with 2 of them being neutral. And for both of those things to happen, right? If the Titans cover and this game goes under, a prerequisite for that is the Colts team total to stay under. The only way you win both is if the Colts team total stays under. So just take the team total under. I think that's the best way to play this game. Tennessee 27th in red zone scoring defense, yet they're 14th in defensive DVOA. So we should expect them to keep the Colts out of the end zone a little bit more. And there's less of a chance of a pick 6 or a fumble with Mason Rudolph at quarterback instead of Will Levis, lower interception and fumble rates for Rudolph.
Dr. Nick dropping coin toss knowledge. Freaking love it. That is outstanding. All right, we got a Sunday night football game. We got the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are 4-point favorites. The total is 47.5. Before we get into that, an announcement. We are back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. We got so many games coming up this week. We got Monday Night Football. We got Christmas coming up. We got Boxing Day games. So we're going to have a special episode of Convince Me to preview all the games this upcoming week. Sean Koerner, I know you're excited about that. There's going to be so many markets to choose from by the time we record. What is your choice for Sunday Night Football?
Well, obviously, I'm going with the touchdown prop. The guy showing the most value in our tool, and it's not some backup running back. It's Mike Evans at even money. You can get Mike Evans to score at even money right now. We're showing the most value on that. But, he's coming off just a massive 2 touchdown game. He's going to need to average over 84 yards a game over the final 3 games here in order to have his 11th straight season of 1,000 more receiving yards. So look for him to play at a high level to close out the season. Plus, the Buccaneers are going to be without tight end Cade Otton tonight, which could lead to, 1 to 2 more targets for Mike Evans. So this is obviously a market he thrives in. He's scored in 6 of 11 games this year. He has 13 end zone targets this season, which ranks 5th, despite missing 3 games. So this is the market he thrives in. I'm projecting him closer to minus 125. If even money bet isn't your style, he's showing more value to score 2 touchdowns at plus 700. So I think just investing in Mike Evans scoring 1 to 2 touchdowns tonight is the way to go.
Here's what's amazing about Mike Evans. I think when he came back, he needed to average about 120 yards per game to get to 1,000. And now it's down to 84. That's how on target Baker and Evans have been since he returned from his hamstring injury. Simon, what's your pick?
Going with Dallas +4, Chad. It's really about the number with this matchup. I just think Tampa's a little inflated after what they did last week against the Chargers. And we've kind of seen a pattern with this team this season that they go on the road, they have these big wins, and they kind of let down, right? I mean, we remember they beat Detroit. That was a huge win. They came home and got blown out by Denver. Then they upset the Eagles. Then what happens? Next week, they lose to Atlanta in an ugly, ugly game. We've just seen Baker kind of been up and down week to week. I feel like it's the same thing here against Dallas. Like, Dallas is the type of team that I think they're going to be able to turn Baker over. Like, we've seen it time and time again. When we have secondaries who can ball hawk, he does tend to give up options, and they have guys that can catch the ball on the Cowboys defensive side. Like, they have a couple guys that can pick him off, and it's all about Todd Bowles. Like, we've seen it time and time again. He beats these teams. He looks great, and then he kind of has a coaching mishap, and that's what I think is going to happen here. Todd Bowles, after he wins 2 games back-to-back, he's just 8-12 against the spread, including 3-6-1 as a favorite in this exact spot. So it's just a line that's been bumped up too much. If this was 3, I probably would avoid, or maybe I would even talk myself into taking Tampa. The fact that it's up to 4 at a lot of books now, even some books now, I just saw it, Chad, before he came on. They're starting to move down to 3.5, which shows professional money is coming on this Cowboys side. I just love this number for this Cowboys team in this matchup.
Well, I know one person who totally disagrees with you. And he's about to pop off, Chris Raybon.
Man, we do this. We haven't done it for a while. Then we did it last week. Simon won that one with Green Bay, so good stuff. But I'm going with Tampa Bay here. I just can't get to Dallas. And we've seen a lot of road favorites covering this year at a high clip, over 60%. I think that's not just due to just randomness. The way the NFL is trending, you have the new kickoff rule. Teams are having better starting field position, and they don't really care about these, 3-point leads. Teams are going for it more. So, like, it's not just underdogs that are, kind of, okay, we're going to go for it on 4th. We're going to go 2-point conversions. Like, the better offenses are tending to do that more and kind of extend their advantage. And Baker Mayfield, he's number 1 in EPA against pressure. He's no longer just that guy who, you get a little pressure at him and he starts turning it over. So he could turn the ball over, but it's been happening more from a clean pocket. It's not something where Dallas can really affect it any more than they have. And Cooper Rush, he's faced 4 bottom 5 defenses over the past 4 weeks, and Dallas is still bottom 5 in points per drive. Now, Tampa Bay is about middle of the pack, but really there was just 3-week period where everyone was hurt. And that's where most of their defensive production was up. Outside of that, like, since they're they're top 5 on defense. Cooper Rush 28th in EPA against the blitz on 3rd and 4th downs. He's been terrible. He gets the ball out quick, but it does nothing with it. So give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, -4.
I believe last week when Raybon and Simon decided to go head-to-head, which I hate, because I feel like I'm, it's a Sophie's choice here. I believe I took the cowardly route and went with Koerner's anytime touchdown. I'm totally doing that again. I'm going with Mike Evans, anytime touchdown, plus 100. I will say, you can see in the Action app, I'm on the Cowboys at +4. So I'm leaning in that direction anyways, but these touchdown props, as we've referenced in the pro reads throughout the season, have been great this year. So give me Mike Evans plus 100 anytime touchdown. This has been Convince Me for today. Don't forget, we're back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. Going to preview the whole week of games, of which there are so many during the week. We're getting NFL football practically every day. Stay tuned for the touchdown show.
Thank you, Chad, and welcome to the Touchdown Show for Week 16. I'm Gilles Gallant with the Action Network, along with Brian Matthews, aka the BMAT. And each week we cover the anytime touchdown market in the NFL. We're going to have best bets for the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. We'll have a touchdown parlay as well at the end of the show, and we're going to do a same game parlay of touchdowns for Bucs Cowboys for Sunday Night Football. So, BMAT, I want to get right into it. Let's kick off the show. So if you haven't watched the show before, here's how it works. We start off with our best anytime touchdown bets with the lowest odds. Then we work our way up and finish off with some spicy 2 touchdown bets, first touchdown bets, anything that is around 10 to 1 or higher, just to get a little get the juices flowing on a Sunday. But let's start off with somebody with a little bit lower odds. A guy that we've used on this show before, probably a pretty popular pick this week, but I love him to score a touchdown. I'm going right to that Rams-Jets game, BMAT, and I am taking Cooper Kupp to score a touchdown today at plus 160. So Kupp has got 6 touchdowns this year. I think that this is a great buy low spot for Kupp because he is coming off the worst game of his career. Now, he's had other games where he's had no catches, but not where he was a fixture in the offense like this. And now he's got the Jets this week, which I think is a good matchup to get back on track. They're bottom 5 in defensive DVOA versus the pass. You're seeing quarterbacks have success against them throwing the ball. 4 passing touchdowns allowed over the last 2 games. I think a key factor as well, especially for Matt Stafford, BMAT, is Jets are going to be missing Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle, for them today. And I think that's going to help Stafford with less pressure up the middle. I mean, like any quarterback, when you're not facing as much pressure, you're going to end up having a little bit more success throwing the ball. That's also applies to Stafford. So I think Matt Stafford is going to look for Cooper Kupp a lot this week. He's going to get him back into the end zone. So that is my first best bet of the week. Cooper Kupp for an anytime touchdown at plus 160. Now, B-Matt, before we hear about your best bet, I wanted to ask you, just as the mindset of a touchdown better, and think about the people who bet on Cooper Kupp last week and just completely got burned by that. How do you feel about betting on a guy for an anytime touchdown when they have such a bad game the week before?
Yeah, you know how I feel about this, especially at the wide receiver position, and that is give me a bounce back game every day of the week. So if you've got a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp that usually sees a good amount of volume and has a Tony Snell-like performance in a game, it's usually a decent bet that they're going to get the ball a few times the next game. Like they're not going to go 2 games in a row with, 0 catches or, 0 catches, then 1 or 2 catches. Like Cooper Kupp, I have a feeling will be heavily involved today. Love this one. And you know how my feelings on Cooper Kupp, one of my favorite players ever in the anytime touchdown betting market. Just very consistent. So
one of the things that I always point to, BMAT, is that the games are kind of like their own standalone thing, and week to week things can change because the best example I point to is the Las Vegas Raiders last year, who lost 3-0 against the Vikings, and then the next week scored 63 points. Everything changes, the matchups change. You can't just be married to what happened the week before. So Cooper Kupp for an anytime touchdown at plus 160 is my best bet. Let's now go to your best bet. Who do you like to score in week 16?
Hey, I'm going to go with a quarterback here, and my mild bet is going to be Anthony Richardson, anytime touchdown at plus 130. And there are a multitude of reasons I'm looking at this. So I look at Anthony Richardson and I think this guy's just been struggling to move the ball down the field, through the air. And so in turn, what's happened is this, the Colts coaching staff has said, go ahead and run. Like, let's unleash the legs. It's a true weapon. So he's had 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games. And it's painfully obvious that I don't think he's a long-term solution as the quarterback. So when your time is potentially waning as a starter, you're not going to be as hesitant to use your quarterback's legs. So look, it's been rough going for the Colts. I don't see them changing today. I think they continue to use Anthony Richardson. And let's also not forget that Jonathan Taylor last week did his best Meshawn Jackson impersonation, dropping the ball before the goal line and ruining my fantasy football playoff hopes. Neither here nor there. So I'm going to go Anthony Richardson to score at plus 130.
That happened like twice last week. That was Jonathan Taylor and remember the Bengals defender, but just before he crossed the line.
Yeah, yep.
It's been happening a lot this year. Malachi Corley is another one that I think of with the Jets who did that. Like that's such an issue for touchdown bettors when that happens. I feel for anybody if you bet on a guy and that happens.
Yeah.
But the one thing about Anthony Richardson, pretty good matchup going against this Titans defense. And then also, like we were on him last week for 2 touchdowns, and he pretty much scored immediately against that Denver Broncos defense that I think is a little bit better as a run defense. So Anthony Richardson at plus 130 to score an anytime touchdown is BMAT's best bet of week 16. Now, if you want access to all of Action Pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Koerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. You'll also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, along with real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today. Use code POWER20 at sign up. One more time, that's POWER20 at sign up for $20 off. All right, B-Matt, let's look at Sunday Night Football between the Buccaneers and Cowboys. Seeing a total of 48.5. Right now at the top, you've got Rico Dowdle at minus 115 for the Cowboys, followed by our guy, Mike Evans, at minus 105. And then you've got Bucky Irving at plus 105, Rashad White at plus 130. CeeDee Lamb now up to plus 150. Jalen McMillan's been coming off a couple touchdown games. He's at plus 260. Jake Ferguson hasn't caught a touchdown yet this year. He's around plus 290, followed by Sterling Shepard, Payne Durham, and Brandon Cooks at plus 400. B-Matt, when I'm looking at this game immediately, like, I mean, I know I see a total of 48.5. I'm not really sure there's going to be that many points. Now, obviously, the Bucs and their passing offense with Baker Mayfield, they've been pushing the ball down the field. They've been looking good over the last few games, specifically Mike Evans, who we cashed on for an anytime touchdown and the 2 touchdown ladder prop last week. So when I look at this game, we talked about how much of an emphasis that the Buccaneers are probably going to put on passing to Mike Evans. Like we already, for example, on the Action app, BMAT and I tracked Mike Evans over 67.5 receiving yards. That has now moved up to 80.5 right now as of Sunday morning. So Mike Evans, I think, is going to get a ton of volume. There's no Trayvon Diggs. I think we have to have him right now as the first leg of the same game parlay. BMAT, do I have to twist your arm and ask you if we should add Mike Evans here?
Set it and forget it. But may I make a suggestion on another player to add?
What do we got?
Can we learn from the lessons of Dalton Schultz yesterday? It might just be time for the tight ends who haven't scored to finally score their first touchdown of the season.
I would love if that happened.
Fergie?
I'm into it. I'm into it. And part of the reason why I'm into it is this Buccaneers defense, like they're bottom 5 in defensive DVOA versus tight ends. So I was looking at this game and looking at Ferg, Schoonmaker, Brevin Spann-Ford, trying to see if there was maybe any angle that I liked. Yeah. It really just came down to, I think Ferguson is still going to be involved in this offense with Cooper Rush. Definitely. I'm just not feeling like Jalen Tolbert or Jalen Brooks isn't even going to play, for example. Brandon Cooks historically doesn't really do that well against zone. And when you look at Ferguson's metrics, he does way better against zone than he does man defenses. And that's what the Bucs play mostly. That's been historically what they do as a cover 2 type of defense. So why don't we pair Mike Evans with Jake Ferguson, B-Matt? Because when you put those two together, that actually comes up to around plus 650 at DraftKings. I'm into that. Why don't we put a half unit on that? And then that way we can be able to have a little bit of action for Sunday Night Football with 2 guys that I think are still going to be heavily involved. Evans, I feel like, is, again, you said it, the set it and forget it type of leg that you want to add for your same game parlay. And I guarantee that Mike Evans, when the people start releasing most bet props and everything else, it's going to be over on Mike Evans. So,
everything.
Yeah, so again, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong because Mike Evans, he's usually the most bet guy in games like that and still ends up performing. So Mike Evans and Jake Ferguson together, that's going to bring us to plus 650 at DraftKings. We're going to put a half unit on that for the same game parlay for Sunday Night Football. But let's come back now to the 1 p.m. slate, BMAP, and you're looking at a touchdown scorer in the NFC East between the Commanders and the Eagles. Who do you like?
Yeah, so this is somebody that's now becoming a mainstay on our show, and that's
Sure has.
Devonte Smith. And I remember a few weeks back when we first put him on here, you and I talked about, hey, look, whenever Dallas Goedert's out, man, let's look at Devonte Smith. Now, fast forward a few weeks later, and all he's done is score in each game since we've talked about that without Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is again out today, and so Washington isn't, the greatest matchup on paper against the slot. They're not the toughest in the league, but it's not something, they're the worst team in the league, against it. But this is a matchup where Devonte Smith is being used as that quick passing game. Really, a lot of the targets that would have gone to Goddard, Grant Calcaterra just does not have the same kind of receiving chops that the Dallas Goedert did. So Devonte Smith has become a huge part of this offense, double-digit targets last week. And I think they continue to get him involved at a high rate. So I like Devonte Smith anytime touchdown at plus 230.
The odds is what is really standing out to me because, for example, I had him on the show in the last two shows, plus 230 and plus 200. He scored in both of them, and now we're playing against the Commanders, and his odds have only gone up. And when you look across the market, this is why it's important to shop around because there's some books that are hanging like a plus 150 on him this week to score. Whereas I think if FanDuel is where you got it at, it's around plus 230 right now. So again, that's a guy that it's the T Higgins paradox, T Higgins, Jamar Chase, like where you're like, okay, I'm not saying that he's the wide receiver one, but it's not that much of a gap between the two, right? So Devonte Smith, that like I'm already on it as well. We both bet that on Thursday. So it was funny that we both texted each other pretty much at the same time being like, you taking Devonte? It's like, go for it.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
All right. So now I'm going to go to the 4 o'clock slate and I'm looking at this Raiders Jacksonville game. It could be very tricky to want to bet on a touchdown score involving Mac Jones and Aiden O'Connell. But I do like a touchdown score on the Jaguars side, who is now going to be in an elevated role. And that is Brenton Strange, the starting tight end now. I grabbed his touchdown odds at plus 360. I'm seeing a plus 370 out there right now, so I still love it at that price. So Brenton Strange, 11 catch game against the Jets. Now, I don't expect him to get that kind of volume again, but again, 12 targets last week from Mac Jones. And Evan Engram is out, and I think that's important. We just talked about that with Dallas Goedert and how do guys play like when another guy is missing here. So Brenton Strange, when Evan Engram misses time, it's been 5 games this year without Engram. He's playing 74% of the snaps. He's got a red zone target in each of the games and 2 receiving touchdowns. And now we're playing against the Raiders, who are, again, very poor against the tight end. 26th in defensive DVOA versus tight ends. They're bottom 5 in catches, yards, and touchdowns to the position. 7 touchdowns allowed. I know it's tricky when betting on a touchdown score involving Mac Jones throwing the ball, but maybe I'm crazy, but I actually liked how Mac Jones looked last week. What do you think about that, B-Man, about Mac Jones in this offense?
Insert the Stranger Things music. No, I love it, man. Hey, look, Brian Thomas Jr. went off last week. The offense actually looked pretty darn good. So I think the odds, especially for a guy that should be heavily involved, I really like it. So
all right, so Brenton Strange is going to be my second best touchdown bet of not second best, but my second touchdown bet of the week. It's my second best bet. Brenton Strange at plus 360, and BMAT is on Devonte Smith at plus 240. Now, we just talked about Mac Jones and this offense. Let's talk about the spicy touchdown bets because you like a spicy touchdown bet from that game, and you like a spicy touchdown bet from the Chicago-Detroit game. Please tell us, what are your spicy touchdown bets for Week 16?
Yeah, so I'm just a glutton for punishment here, going with average to below average quarterback play for both of these guys. But I just think the volume's a lot. So I'm going to go a quarter unit on each of these. The first one is going to be DJ Moore, 2+ touchdowns. And so shout out to Derek Brown over at Fantasy Pros. If you don't follow him, please do. He just has a lot of great information. But just since week 11, Moore has seen 11 red zone targets. Detroit has also been one of the teams that has run the most single high coverage. And when that happens, he's got a 33.3% target share. 1/3. That's insane. So I'm looking at DJ Moore since Thomas Brown, this new offensive coordinator, has come in. It has been, let's get DJ Moore the ball early and often. He hasn't had the, huge game in terms of, touchdowns yet. I just think this is a matchup where he could absolutely do that in. My second pick And I talked about, hey, look, I like Mac Jones. All right. And the reason why I was alluding to the fact that I might have a Jaguars player as one of my picks, and that is Brian Thomas Jr., two plus touchdowns. That's plus 1,300. And look, the volume is king. I always say that, right? And this guy, double-digit catches last week, double-digit targets. He is clearly the alpha in this offense. And it's the end of the year. They want to get him as much work as he can handle and build up as much momentum as you can heading into next year. So I think Mac Jones has kind of built up a little bit of, when watching last week, he's built up a little bit of momentum. And I think he can kind of carry that forward in a game where I don't expect them to be leading by multiple touchdowns. So I think that they're going to have to throw the ball the whole game. And when you do that, and Brian Thomas, is such a, heavily targeted player, I think at the end of the day, we get, hopefully 2 touchdowns from Brian Thomas Jr. and 1 from Brenton Strange.
Well, I do think Brian Thomas Jr. has reaffirmed why they let go of Calvin Ridley. I mean, he has looked fantastic in this offense. If it wasn't for the fact of just the other rookies like already playing well, like he'd probably be right up there for offensive rookie of the year. DJ Moore is always tricky, and really just Bears offense in general, because to borrow an expression from my guy Stuckey, it's like catching the falling knife. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're trying to thread the needle here, but a lot of the time the Bears and their offense, they just make questionable decisions that you're like, oh, like why did I do that? So that's really the only thing, that's the tax that you have to pay when you're betting on a Bears touchdown score, is just that agony of like, why did they do that? But if they actually are competent, DJ Moore at this price is fantastic at 16-1, especially in this matchup against the Lions at home, playing a lot of man coverage. That's the type of matchup that DJ Moore could excel at. And Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, they're playing the Raiders. They play a lot of man coverage as well. Brian Thomas could very well get 2 touchdowns on that defense. So that is BMAT's spicy touchdown bets of the week. He's on Brian Thomas Jr. for 2 touchdowns at 13-1 and DJ Moore for 2 touchdowns at 16-1. All right, I'm going to the 4 p.m. slate again for my 2 bets. And my spicy bets this week are going to be Jordan Addison for 2 touchdowns at 14-1 and George Kittle for 2 touchdowns at 13-1. Let's talk about Addison here. So Addison, 8 touchdowns this year. He's got a 2 touchdown and a 3 touchdown game this season. He had 2 touchdown games last year. So there is some 2 touchdown pedigree with Addison. And since the Vikings week 6 bye, Addison has 15 red zone targets. I bring that up because Justin Jefferson only has 13. So there is clearly a connection with Darnold and Addison in this point. And Addison has 6 touchdowns in the last 7 games. He's scored in 4 of the 7 games. And the one thing about Addison, I think a lot of people will point to, is the target share, because Addison's never really had a big target share in this offense because Justin Jefferson, he just commands so much attention. But I think because of that, Sam Darnold's going to probably have to look elsewhere, and I think he may have to look deep. Now, there is going to be probably some weather in this game, some gusty rain, but I think that the Vikings and this passing offense is going to have still a little bit of success. And also, it really was encouraging because friend of the show, Nick Giffen, one of his best bets coming into this game is Sam Darnold over 1.5 passing touchdowns. So if he's on that, then I'm feeling good about the Vikings and having a little bit of success throwing the ball. And of course, the Seahawks, they're bottom 10 in touchdowns, wide receivers, bottom 10 versus the deep ball. So if there's any chance of a deep ball being completed, it's probably going to be to Jordan Addison. And I like him for 2 touchdowns of 14-1. Now, Kittle, I don't really feel like I need to sell to you guys. He's got 8 touchdowns this year. Really, the reason why we're going back to Kittle here is on a 3-game scoring drought. But for him, kind of like Mike Evans in a sense, kind of matchup proof against any defense. He's 4th in the NFL with 11 targets inside the 10-yard line. He's got the 2nd most touchdown receptions inside the 10-yard line. And now you're facing a Dolphins team that is bottom 8 in defensive DVOA versus tight ends. A lot of touchdowns allowed. I expect him to see a lot more targets, since I'm not really sure how successful the Niners running game is going to be. I'm not saying that Patrick Taylor can't have success, but they're on like running back 5 now. But at this point, I think if anything, they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. I did see Tyreek Hill is planning to play, so I do think that the Dolphins will have a little bit more success offensively. And for what it's worth, Kittle has scored in 4 of 5 road games this year. One of them was against the Seahawks, where he had a few touchdowns in that game as well. So Jordan Addison for 2 touchdowns at 14-1 and George Kittle for 2 touchdowns at 13-1 are my spicy touchdown bets of week 16. B-Matt, before we talk about what our favorite parlay of the day is, what do you think of these two guys in these matchups? Do you think Addison could have more success against the Seahawks defense, or do you think Kittle could have more success against that Dolphins defense?
I think they can both have success. I mean, honestly, like George Kittle has just been amazing this year. And like a lot of times you look at the tight ends and it's like with some of them, you're like, well, they're allowed to do everything but score. It's not George Kittle. This year he's moving them down the field. And yes, he has a few game drought, but love that pick. And then as far as Addison, I do love anytime we can get an SC Trojan on there. And I think we were talking about this earlier. He is benefited so much by just how good of a football player and how much attention that Justin Jefferson requires.
Yep.
And it's clear that Darnold loves getting him the ball, and they've got good chemistry. So I like both of these.
All right, perfect. So, all right, Jordan Addison, George Kittle, those are the spicy touchdown bets. Let's now move to the touchdown parlay of the week. Normally, this is a 180 challenge. Last week, BMAT, we cashed on this. We had Justice Hill and Jameson Williams. You ended up double dipping because Jameson was one of your best bets. So that was a double winner for us last week to be able to get that at plus 240. So when I gave out Justice Hill as part of one of the legs for the 180 challenge last week, part of it was using the Action Pro projections for anytime touchdowns, because last week, Justice Hill, going into that matchup against the Giants, he was around 5-1. He was considered the biggest edge for Action Pro projections, around like a 4-5% edge. This week, I want to do that again. And similar type of matchup where you're seeing a favorite with a big spread. And that's going to be Ray Davis with the Buffalo Bills. He's around 4-1 at FanDuel. He's scored in 2 of the last 3 games and has been getting some reception work, him and Ty Johnson. But James Cook, I think, may be put in a position where maybe he might not have to run as much again in the second half. I think Josh Allen as well. Like, I'm not saying that they won't impose their will in the first half, but Ray Davis is almost kind of like a ladder. Like you're hoping for the garbage time touchdown in a sense, but he has been getting work even on early downs in games where it's a neutral game script. So I want to add Ray Davis as one of the legs for the 180 challenge as part of the touchdown odds edge that we get. He's around 4-1 at FanDuel. B-Matt, who should we pair with Ray Davis to do a parlay for week 16?
Yeah, I got a guy. He almost was my my medium bet for this week, but I thought, maybe I shouldn't go with
you made the cutting room floor?
Yeah, suspect quarterback play on every pick. So Malik Neighbors at plus 200.
Okay.
The volume is there. It's not DeVito, which I'm very happy about. Drew Lock is going to be playing quarterback. And while it's not like, we're talking about the second coming of Tom Brady in his prime, he's a notable upgrade from Tommy DeVito. So look, at plus 200, I just think Neighbors is going to get enough volume to find the end zone here. And he ended his drought last week. So now let's keep it rolling.
Well, and he has a pretty decent matchup too against man coverage. So, and he's been easily the guy who leads target share for man coverage for the Giants, regardless of the quarterback, right? So, Ray Davis and Malik Neighbors, you put those together at FanDuel, B-Matt, we're getting around 14-1 for the touchdown odds for this. So I'm thinking, why don't we just not keep it safe, but why don't we just keep it to 2 legs at 14-1? We don't have to throw in like a huge steamed leg like Saquon Barkley or something like that just to get to 18-1. I say we just stick with these 2 legs, go with the 14-1 parlay.
Amen.
All right, well, B-Matt, that's all for today. I've got 4 picks. You've got 4 picks. We've got a touchdown parlay. We've got a same game parlay for Sunday Night Football. I want to remind everybody, the Touchdown Show, we're going to be right back here tomorrow. You and I, B-Matt, we're coming back with some touchdown bets for the Christmas Day games. And it's all part of the Action Network Power Hour special edition for Christmas with Convince Me kicking us off at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Action Network YouTube page. And if you go on social media, on X, Instagram, whatever, you'll see it promoted that we're going to be doing the show tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. And if you missed today's show and you want to get our picks, you can download the Action app. All of our touchdown bets are tracked there. You can get them as soon as we bet them with pick notifications. So I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Touchdown Show for Week 16. Bon chance.